Hi everyone, welcome back to the Zombie Hour. On this episode, I am joined again with my good friend Victoria.
Hi, this is my second episode here. So now it's time for the paycheck to start rolling in.
Maybe not. In this episode, I kind of wanted to take a different approach to what we'd be talking about. So we'd be discussing the movie The Greatest Showman. And when you think of that movie, you don't really see it as a mental health movie, or at least I don't see it as that. So I wanted to talk more about the whole idea of self-love and self-acceptance, because I think that goes hand in hand with mental health. And this is a really fun movie that explores that theme. So this film talks about the showman P.T. Barnum and his journey of like kind of finding himself, and on that journey he creates a safe space, I guess, for a group of like quote unquote misfits, freaks,
and helps them find themselves.
So PT gets laid off from his job, and then he buys a wax museum, and the wax museum is not successful at all. So then he turns it into a circus basically. And there's a reference to when he was younger, he was very, very poor. And there was a scene where he was stealing bread, and then the owner of the store like took the bread back from him. And then this kind of like
strange looking
lady, she gave him an apple.
She showed him kindness, and so eventually when he got older, he kind of remembered this.
So that kind of inspired him to go in the direction of creating a circus. So he sought out two individuals, and then he put up posters and stuff, basically just inviting everybody who's like weird and different, like, this is a place for you.
Like the guy with all the tattoos.
This is a place for you, come visit, come, express yourself. And Zendaya, Zac Efron.
Crazy.
But so in particular, I would be focusing on the story of the bearded lady. I don't even know if she has a name. I think it's just the bearded lady. And then there's a really, really short guy. His name is Charles. And
bearded lady and Charles.
And basically, their stories, I think, in this movie in particular are very inspiring, and they really capture self-acceptance and what it is to like go from a place of like absolutely hating yourself, like hiding yourself constantly, to literally being like the star of your own story.
Digging into the two of their stories is like kind of understanding the entire freak show as a whole.
So PT goes to talk to Charles and to talk to the bearded lady, and comparing them to the other members of the circus, you could see that like when you're like trying to get to a place of like acceptance, when you're trying to accept yourself and like you want to be like accepted by others, for you to really be okay with who you are, I think you have to be very open with yourself about like who you are, And
the two of them weren't. They tried to hide them. They were clearly ashamed. Of how they look.
They were in hiding for basically their whole life,
and the people around them were also ashamed of them. So that didn't help anybody's self-esteem.
I think the whole aspect in self-acceptance of where you need to be vulnerable with yourself to like accept like, okay, this is me, this is this is who I am. That process is a lot harder for some people than it is for others. So in the instance of Charles and the bearded lady, they were very like, I don't ever want anybody to see me, and PT had to they had to like be sought out. And then that same process could be very easy for other people. So like the other people in the circus, they were like, oh, I'm seeing this flyer, and
I fit this description, so
this sounds like people like me, so like I'm just gonna go. And they were a lot more comfortable like getting into that sort of thing,
exploring the differences.
So you see that vulnerability is different for different people, basically, and opening up can be very, very hard. And when PT goes to talk to Charles obviously, as we said before, is in a mind space where it's like, you know, I'm not good enough for anything. Like, his mom was hiding him, basically.
Even his mother, when PT came to look for Charles, his mother said that she didn't have a son, and then he was like, oh, I have the hospital records.
Yeah. And when PT starts talking to Charles is like, you just want people to laugh at me. And then PT's like, oh, but I mean, like, people are gonna laugh anyway, so like, why not get paid for it? And I mean,
bad approach. Good logic, bad approach.
That's a good way, I guess, to kind of look at it, because people, regardless of who you are and what you present to society, people will have opinions.
Even if, like, stereotypically there's like nothing wrong with you, quote unquote nothing wrong with you, somebody's always gonna have a problem. Some kind of problem with you.
So like that approach of like, people are just gonna like say whatever they want, so like, why not benefit from that? I think that's a good approach at like being like, okay, I might be different, but like, who cares, you know? So he goes to find Charles, and then he also goes to get the bearded lady, and she works in a bakery, a restaurant,
I think so.
And she is in the kitchen area, but she works at like the back where nobody can see her, and then there's like a curtain separating her from the rest of the staff. He goes to find her, and she's singing. She has a great voice, and he doesn't know that she has a bed, so he opens the curtain, and everybody's like, oh my god. And then she's like, so you have to leave, like, please, I'm uncomfortable.
He doesn't even flinch when he sees her or anything.
No, yeah. When you see the bed for the first time, everybody on the screen is like, oh my god, wow, that's so crazy.
Except
but then PT's like, your voice is amazing.
And
like,
then PT calls her beautiful.
And then when he says, you're very beautiful, everybody starts laughing. Because like, how could a lady with a bed be beautiful? Like, that's such an unfathomable concept, because people, I think, we all have such a specific
mindset of how somebody should look.
Basically, yeah. People don't like what's different, and they're uncomfortable with what's different. So like, the idea, as I said before, the idea of like a lady with a bed, that's so gross, and like, you know. But again, he's creating this safe space for people that are different. So he recruits her, he recruits Charles, and then more people, they see the flyers and they start coming in. Zendaya shows up. It gets crazy.
Zendaya in a pink lace front. And also, when PT, going back to when PT was putting up the flyers, and these people were coming in to, these like quote unquote freaks were coming in to be part of his show. When he was talking to them, he was embellishing things about them. So there was one guy, and he asked him how heavy he was, and he said 500 pounds. And then PT was like, oh, 750 pounds. And then there was this really tall person. He was like, oh, are you Irish? And then he made him the Irish giant. So they kind of created these personas, these roles for them to be in the freak show. And I feel like creating a character it helps people to feel like they fit in more, because they're like, if I'm playing this role, then other people know I'm playing this role, so it's not as weird and I'm not as different. So I guess that's kind of like a coping mechanism for them, and that at the front, it doesn't seem to be like the best idea, because how are these people going to accept themselves if they think they're playing a role? As the movie goes on, you can see that these people get more and more comfortable with themselves in this role, and they're like, at the end, they're like, okay, I know I'm playing a role, but I also know that this is me, and I'm just playing a role for the other people so that I can benefit from this and I can feel more comfortable with myself.
Yeah, that's a good way to put that aspect of it. As well as when the one scene that I want to mention is there's a scene where the whole crew is brought together, and it's the first time they're going to be seen by the public. And you know, they're all nervous. Some people are like, oh, this is the first time I'm actually like showing like who I am to people, you know, and like kind of like unveiling. Basically, they come out to the public, and like people are staring at them, and they're like kind of like grossed out, but kind of like fascinated.
You also see a big difference in the reactions from children versus the reactions of adults, and I feel like that is something that's so present today still. That behavior, it's like learned behavior to hate, because these children are looking at these freaks and they're just interested, they're intrigued by, you know, these people that don't look like them. And then the adults are there, and the adults are there trying to hide their kids, being scornful. But that is obviously a learned trait, and we still see that in today's society, you know.
And I think that when they see the crowd looking at them and they look at the faces and they're like, some people are like, oh, this is like interesting, they kind of, for that like first show, they kind of are like, okay, well, they don't hate me, maybe they don't like me, but they don't hate me, and that kind of like allows them to be more comfortable at the beginning of the whole like accepting themselves process.
Like, maybe this won't be as bad as I think it is.
Yeah, and I think that validation really helps. And I think like in general, validation helps you. Like, if somebody goes, oh no, I like this about you, you're like, oh no, maybe it actually isn't bad. Maybe like it's okay, even though you haven't fully accepted that part of you.
Yeah. And then
but
somebody else comes
along and then you're like, maybe I'm not
maybe
gross.
That's my head. Maybe it's my head.
Okay. So like validation does help self-acceptance.
And while it's like, yes, you shouldn't count on other people to validate you for you to be able to validate yourself, the reality is that you're gonna think about what other people say anyways. As much as you try not to, the reality is you are gonna think about what other people think of you.
Yeah.
And so while yes, self-validation is way more important than validation from other people, the validation from other people definitely helps you feel more comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah. And though that first show went really well and like the crowd liked them and whatever, as soon as like that show was done, they were in like a back alley, and like these protesters were like screaming at them like, y'all are so gross, y'all are so weird, God hates those
and then there's
things. And
then it starts beating them up.
Yeah, and then PT has to like come out and like be like, hey, leave them alone, whatever. I think that shows that like the journey of accepting yourself and like being okay with who you actually are is always interrupted by people who are like, no, you're actually gross. Like,
and again, the foreshadowing is so in your face, because that things like that, while they might not happen to that extent anymore, they still happen very much in today's society, where people see something that's different and they hate it and they want to fight, you know.
Yeah, and to like make it a bit more personal, I think like people like myself who struggle with like body image and stuff, like you could get at a point where you're like, you wake up one day and you look in the mirror and like, my body doesn't actually look that bad today, and then you go out and then somebody makes a comment about your body, and then it just kind of backtracks everything. So like, it doesn't have to be like somebody like physically attacking you, but like little comments and like looks and like glares and stuff really backtracks your whole...
It goes back to the validation thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like with the body image things, like, yes, I feel good, I think I look good, and then one person just has to say something, and in their face you can say, okay, well, screw you, you know. But it still kind of hurts, like you still feel it, you know,
especially when you're not like fully set in like, I don't care what people say about me, I'm happy with who I am. And when you're like in a much more fragile state of mind, and things like that really, really affect you.
And I think as teenagers, I don't think many teenagers are in that space where nothing affects them, you know.
Oh no, definitely not.
As a teenager, that it's like definitely gonna affect you, even if you don't want it to.
I feel like even like past teenage years, I mean, I'm still a teenager. I'm like, obviously a lot of teenagers are very like, I'm still very unsure of myself, and as you get older you kind of like you build a better sense of identity, but I feel like you're still never completely set in who you are,
definitely.
You know. So like, it really, like, maybe a comment about your body might not affect you when you're like 26 versus like when you're like 15.
Or it might not affect you in the same way, at least.
Yeah, but it still would, you know, be there and like make you feel weird about yourself. And then further on in the movie, they get invited to the Buckingham Palace with the Queen.
Like Queen Victoria, OMG.
And you could tell this is after a few circus shows, and like when the circus
starts
like,
being more and more successful.
Yeah, when they get more popular and stuff. You could tell how comfortable they are with themselves, especially since someone in such a high position is like, I want to meet these freaks, like I want to see them.
But then they also bring up the topic of racism, and because this is set in the Victorian era, so they bring up the topic of racism. And when Zac Efron comes and tells everyone
what's the character's name?
tells everyone that the Queen wants to see them. Zendaya and her brother are the only two black performers in the circus, and so her character says, does she want to see all of us? Because of this time period, being black is such a shame. So on top of her being in a circus, she's also black, which is a big shame. So why would the Queen want to see me, you know?
Yeah.
And then Zac Efron, because I don't remember his name, Zac Efron says if she doesn't want to see all of us, then she's not going to see any of us. And that, I think, is another thing that's still very valid today, that a lot of people judge people based on their skin color.
Yeah.
You know?
I think a lot of things like that, like race, sexuality, all of that stuff affects your like self-acceptance journey. Obviously race and sexuality are different.
With race, you can't control how other people see you, because that's a completely physical thing. With sexuality, it's a little bit easier to cover up for some people, but at the same time, it's like covering it up is so difficult and so uncomfortable, and it just makes you feel bad about yourself. And again, with race, it's like you can't cover this thing up, you know?
Yeah.
And
yeah, stuff like that. Like, that's not like a body image thing, like I look too big or I look too skinny or whatever.
Thing.
That's like a societal thing. So, and aside from like looking like a freak, quote unquote, you have to deal with things like racist people, bigots, all of those things. Those are all barriers to accepting yourself and loving yourself. That's why it's such a hard process, because you have to deal with your personal perception as well as the perception and the comments and opinions of other people, you know? Even
if you look and behave exactly like everybody else, you can have one thing about you that is just slightly off, and there will be people coming at you for that one small thing.
Yeah.
And that one small thing, that is a lot for somebody to handle, you know?
And going back to that scene where they're invited to go to meet Queen Victoria, you see a personality change in Charles.
Oh, yeah.
Because when Petey first goes to find him to join the circus, he like doesn't really say much. He's very shy. He's like, please don't look at me. But then he's literally at the Buckingham Palace,
crude jokes,
and he is just like talking it off to Queen Victoria, you know? And you see like his confidence build up over that period of like doing the shows and like being more celebrated for who he is.
And then he says something to Queen Victoria and everybody gets quiet because they think, oh no, this little strange freak man said something disrespectful to the Queen. And then she starts laughing, and then slowly everybody else starts laughing, and then you can see the relief on everybody's faces when they're like, oh, okay, we didn't mess up, like we're fine, we're good, she likes us.
Yeah. And when after they meet Queen Victoria, there's a performance from this opera singer, and during the performance there's a cute little moment between Zac Efron and Zendaya's characters, because they like each other, but like they're not really together, because they can't be together because of societal barriers. So they have a cute little moment and they like hold hands, but then you see Zac Efron's character's parents see them holding hands, and he's like, oh my god, my parents just saw,
and he lets go
and he quickly lets go of her hand, and she's like, wow, I thought, you know, this person like accepted me, like saw me and like didn't see me as like gross, and you
didn't see me as a color, he saw me as a person.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that, again, going back to like the whole being vulnerable thing, stuff like that makes being vulnerable even harder, because when you're somebody who opening up is not easy for you and then you find somebody, or you find like a moment or whatever where you're like, you know, I'm okay like being a bit more transparent with myself, and you know, and she was put in the circus by people who accepted her for who she was, and she thought that this person that she cared about accepted her. And when you open up to somebody that you think cares about you, and then they turn out to just like treat you like everybody else treats you,
you open up yourself, you make yourself vulnerable, and then
it kind of is like you go completely back to the beginning of the whole accepting yourself, because it's like you really
you work towards this self-acceptance and opening yourself up and becoming more honest with yourself and with the people around you.
Yeah.
And then one of
and
the
then
people
Zac
that you
Efron
think,
is like, nah,
yeah.
so what?
And then you think you could trust Zac Efron, and then he lets go of your hand.
Yeah,
you know?
basically. And that's like, that happens with friends, with romantic partners, colleagues, whatever. Like, that happens with literally every single person that you, it can happen with everything, literally every relationship you have in life. And yeah, it just makes it more difficult when you trust somebody and you open up to them, you know.
It does, while it does make it difficult, it doesn't prevent you from living, you know. It doesn't prevent you from doing what you have to do, being where you have to be. It's just it takes a toll on your personal growth. Like in the show, like, you know, he let go of her hand and she felt betrayed by him, but she didn't, like, you know, stop talking to him or stop, you know, whatever.
She still continued being herself.
She
which
went
is
on
important
to do her part in the show.
And that's a good segue into like the next scene, because the circus crew is obviously at the Buckingham Palace and they're very excited to like come out and meet all of the people involved in the opera singers show and, like, you know, interact with everybody. So they're like ready to like come out into the room where everybody's socializing, and then PT's like, no, you guys have to stay here, we have a circus show just now, like, don't come out. And he's basically like hiding them. And they're like
hiding them from the people that came for their show.
Yeah, basically. And they're like, I don't understand, like, I thought everything was cool, I thought everything was normal. And then the bearded lady, this is really where she shines.
I think this is like probably the most important scene of the entire movie.
Absolutely. But basically, after PT is like, you guys don't come out, please, they all are like, that's really rude of you, but you know what, I am not in that mindset I was at the beginning. So what you're saying to me right now does not make me feel bad about myself, because I know who I am, and like, I know that this is me, and I'm not gonna let you like hide me anyway. I'm okay with who I am.
While PT helped them get to this point of them being like, I'm okay with who I am, but then in this specific scene he basically says, oh psych, I didn't really want you to do that, and they're like, okay, well, you already did that. And so
basically band together and they come out into the room that PT told them not to come out into, and they're basically around all of the people that PT's trying to hide them from, and they perform this extremely powerful number, the This Is Me song. And this song really sets the tone for this entire movie. And the bearded lady sings, I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be, this is me. And she's performing this in front of like all the aristocrats and like, I don't know, and you know,
these rich posh people that look down on people like this. Look down on people like the bearded lady and Charles.
And they come out and they're singing this, and she also says, I'm not scared to be seen, I make no apology, this is me. And you could see, like, it's just a really powerful number, and I really urge you to watch it. And you know, they're very tired of being like judged and being like scorned for who they are, and like, what is it?
I think definitely, even if you don't like musical music or whatever,
this
you like if you just listen to the lyrics of this song, it's like, so
it's powerful,
it's real,
it's actually,
it's like real.
And that scene is basically just them realizing like, this is who I am.
I don't need other people to validate me anymore. You know?
And then in that same number, they go out into like the streets and they're singing the same song, and you know, these words: we are warriors, I won't let them break me down to dust, I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. They are singing this also in front of, they go out and they're singing in front of the protesters, the same protesters that were like, you know, God hates y'all, this is gross, y'all are freaks, get out.
Just to bring up one of the signs that that I noticed one of the protesters were holding, it said something along the lines of like, God wishes you were never born, or something like that. And I feel like that is so valid for something today, because you still see those signs. If you go to a pride parade, you still see signs like that, you know. And it just shows you that this mindset is not something that's new or old. It's been here forever, like, and it probably will remain here forever. But
that is the reality of it.
And you just you have to be okay with who you are, and you need to say, okay, well, I was born for a reason. I'm still here for a reason. I'm gonna live my life, you know? I'm gonna be happy with myself.
And it is hard to reach that point, but it is
definitely.
a point that
it takes the whole movie to reach.
It is a point that is really, really important in a person's life. And another thing I think is important, it was easier for them to come out and do all of that as a group as compared to like individuals. So like when you have support from like-minded people, it's much easier. That whole process of like, I'm okay with me is much easier.
And then not just with like-minded people, like even when you have support from anyone, like Zac Efron is not one of the freaks. Eventually he realizes that these are his people. He's comfortable with them, they're comfortable with him. And he's not, maybe he doesn't look like them, he doesn't have a talent like them or whatever, but he is one of them. And so that also I think helps all of them, the freaks and Zac Efron, to be more comfortable with themselves. Because even though his character wasn't somebody strange, he was like on the verge of failure. His shows were failing, his whatever he was doing, his plays or whatever, he was basically on the verge of being a failure. And he met these people
and they just embraced him basically. Just like took him and they're like, we don't really care.
We don't really care.
We don't care at all. Another important part in the song is where her character is looking directly at Zac Efron's character and she's singing the words "This is me" to let him know hey,
you let go of my hand, but guess what, I don't even care about you.
And like she made it very like known that I'm not gonna change for you. This is who I am. Like, take me as I am or watch me as I go. Because
that's right, guys.
This is who I am. And if you're not okay with it, then you're not worth my time.
That's your problem. Yeah, that's your problem. Because it's obvious throughout the entire movie that Zac Efron still has strong feelings for her. But he just takes a while to be able to get over himself. And his pride.
But sometimes you can't wait for other people.
Even when they do that whole musical number together, which is also top
that's a good
10 out of 10.
Yeah.
She's still at the end, she's like, okay, but we still can't be together if you're not gonna accept me.
And I think that that's really, really important for like young people, because sometimes when you like somebody and they don't like you back, you feel the need to like, oh, something's wrong with me, I have to change, but like, no. You will find somebody who likes you for you, and if the person you're interested in doesn't like you for you, then they're not worth being interested in. Find somebody else. And the bearded, in that same number, the bearded lady is singing this is me, this is who I'm meant to be, and you could see like as she's singing, she's constantly surrounded by the same support system we were talking about. And my favorite lyric in that song, she screams to the top of her voice, "There's nothing I'm not worthy of." And to me, that's the most important line of this entire movie. Cut the script, cut all the other songs,
just cancel.
This is it. Because it's so true. Like, there's nothing. You have to believe that there is nothing that you are not worthy of. You are worthy of love. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be heard. And you are worthy of happiness. Like, you are just worthy, period. That's it,
And going back to the validation thing, again, other people validating you is important, but it's not as important as you validating yourself. Like, you have to look at yourself in the mirror every single morning. There is nothing I'm not worthy of. Say it to yourself every single day. Force yourself to believe it. Even it's something that's very cheesy, and you're probably like, okay, well, this
shut
whatever.
Up, guys.
But
it's like, it's actually very true and very valid, because you have to believe that.
It's like if you were learning the colors and you saw green, and every single day people told you, no, that color's blue, that color's blue. You start believing that color's blue. If every day you told yourself, I'm worthy, even if you think you sound like a clown, even if you're like, oh, this is a joke, this makes no sense.
No,
eventually you will start believing it.
You have to force yourself. You have to force yourself to believe that you deserve good things. Like, you're a good person. You deserve good things in life. You deserve to be treated well, respected. Don't take anything less from other people. Don't accept lesser, because people like make you think like, oh, well, you're not all that or whatever. Like, don't accept the the bare minimum, you know?
Yeah, but that is also different. Not accepting the bare minimum and believing in yourself and accepting yourself is different from being overconfident and over cocky and full of yourself, you know? Like
there is a line between I love myself and
I'm in love with myself. Yeah.
There is a difference between that.
Knowing where that line is very important. I mean,
but it is difficult.
Fair, but also to be fair, if you are in love with yourself, you probably don't notice when other people are like, you are disgusting.
Yeah, true.
But so I guess it doesn't really affect you as much. But like on a whole, if you want to be somebody who's, you know, helpful in society, I guess, like, you know, you gotta find that line and be able to balance on it.
Yeah, but basically, to you listening right now, my listener, I want you to know that there is nothing that you are not worthy of.
Thanks, Shilla.
You deserve good things in life. You deserve love. You deserve happiness. You deserve acceptance, appreciation. You deserve all that good stuff. And you have to force yourself to believe that.
Yes. I think a lot of people really struggle with that. They're like, yes, I know, but they don't actually believe it and they don't actually think about it, you know? They don't actually internalize it.
People are like, 2 years ago, if you were to tell me, oh, Jillian, there's nothing you're not worthy of, I'd be like, okay, thank you. And then I'd be like, get away from me right now. I don't know what you're saying. Because I'm uncomfortable with, like, actually being like, no, Jillian, you're actually, like, you're not bad. Like, you're actually okay.
You're not bad, Jillian.
You know what I mean? Like, Jillian, you're actually
not actually okay. Repulsive.
No, you're actually okay. I feel like people, going back to the whole, like, opening up to yourself about yourself, it feels very uncomfortable when you are not okay with yourself, and then you try to, like when you try to address that emotion and that feeling of, like, I'm gross, and then somebody's like, no, you're actually not gross. You're like, okay, thank you, get away. You know what I mean?
And I think, like, this 100% applies to me. I am so bad with figuring out what I'm feeling and accepting things from other people. So, like, somebody would be like, oh my god, you look so nice today, and I'm like, okay, thank you. And then I would go and I'm like, ew, do I look disgusting? Are they lying?
Change my outfit.
Change my outfit, change my jewelry.
Yeah.
Go to sleep.
But I do think that is the most, like, that is the line of the movie. And as you said, Victoria, it does sound cheesy, but, like, that's the truth, sweetie. Get with the program.
It's kind of like journaling, you know. At the beginning, it's like, oh, this seems cheesy. This seems like it's not gonna work. This is something like only those superficial people do in those movies. But then you start doing it, or you start doing something like journaling, and you realize eventually that, oh, this actually helps me.
Yeah.
It might not help somebody else, but it helps me, you know?
Yeah. And while they're singing this song, the crowd is like, oh, this is such a catchy tune, I love it.
Yeah.
But, like, they don't actually know what this song actually means to the crew, you know?
But I think that the crowd singing it back to the crew also helps the crew be like, yeah, I am worthy. You know?
Yeah.
I am enough. I think you hearing yourself say there's nothing I'm not worthy of is different from you hearing somebody else tell you there's nothing you're not worthy of, you know?
Yeah.
Again, with the validation thing, both self-validation and validation from other people, they're both important. It's just you need to figure out which one is more important, which is self-validation, by the way. But they're both important for you as a person and self-growth.
Yeah, but, like, I think different people view it like, I need people to like me more than I actually like myself, which might not be beneficial.
I don't think that is very beneficial, but I think that a lot of people need that to work themselves up to get to the point of self-validation.
Yeah.
It just takes time, you know?
Yeah, and everybody's acceptance journey is different.
And it comes in at different times, different paces.
Because we're all different people.
You're not a weird person or a bad person if you feel like you need validation from somebody else, and you're not a weird person or a bad person if you feel like you need it from yourself.
I think that now I appreciate self-validation more than, like, validation from other people. Definitely. But I do, like, validation from other people does help me sometimes.
Yeah.
That's, like, a completely normal thing.
Like, as a teenager, well, I'm still a teenager, as a younger teenager, it's like I would do things and say things because I knew that, like, this is what my friends like, you know? This is what, if I say this, then they can find something to bond with me about, you know?
Yeah.
And now I don't really I know I'm very different from my friends, but they accept me for who I am. They like me for who I am, and I like me for who I am. But I also sometimes, when I do feel different, I might like go on the internet or something and see people who are like me, who express themselves like me, and then I'm like, okay, I'm fine, I'm normal, you know, I'm good.
Yeah.
And that validation that I give myself is now a lot more important than me saying, hey Jalen, do you like this thing about me? Well, I wouldn't say it directly like that, but yeah. But you know, it's like, I like this thing about me, so I don't really care if you don't like it or not.
Yeah. I got you.
Unless it's something harmful. If it's something harmful, then maybe think about that a little longer.
But yeah, that basically is the entire movie. There's just that one scene, basically.
Basically, just skip ahead to like
but
an
yeah.
hour in.
And then the same opera singer we mentioned earlier, PT, he goes on tour with her and like leaves the circus crew members. And I feel like when you're trying to get to a place that's like, I'm okay with myself, you make a lot of comparisons. And I think for them, it's like the way that they feel about the opera singer. She's like this very beautiful lady, and she's like conventionally attractive, and she has like a normal talent, like a regular talent, and everybody is like celebrating her. She doesn't have to try to like change any aspects of herself. They like her for who she is, and she's performing and she's singing, and you know, people are throwing roses at her. But then when the circus people are performing, they're
throwing garbage
at
them.
Protesters come in the circus and throw garbage at them, you know. And that kind of like, when you are like, oh, I don't look like that normal person, you go back to like, something's wrong with me, you know. And it makes the whole process very difficult.
It is a lot easier for some people to be okay with themselves than it is for other people. That's just a fact. Like, you just know that, you know. But you see with the circus that even though they're getting things thrown at them, they're getting garbage thrown at them and whatever, it is affecting them, but they are still gonna go on, they're still gonna put the show on, they're still gonna embrace themselves after that. And it does, you know, take a little toll on their psyche, but at the same time they're like, okay, but this is still who I am, so I'm gonna power through this, you know. She doesn't have to do that, the opera singer, she doesn't have to do that, because they're throwing roses at her and giving her a standing ovation, you know. So for her to put on her next show, it's nothing, that's normal, she's fine. But for them to put on their other show, it's a lot more work. But they still do it, you know.
And I think when you get to the point of, this is who I am, I'm okay with that, the hardest part from there is staying in that space and not letting people throw garbage at you, not letting that experience take you back to, no, something's wrong with me. So it's difficult, but when you reach to these points where you're like, no, I'm happy with who I am, it's just about like maintaining that. Like, obviously you're not gonna feel that way 24/7. That's very unrealistic, but it's just basically like not letting yourself come out of that spot for too long, because then you just start over, you know, you just go back to the beginning.
And for us as young people, this is definitely going to be something that's a lot harder to focus on than, say, if I was like 40 years old and I've already lived my life. Well, okay, sorry, I didn't mean to call 40-year-old people old, but it's like, compare a 40-year-old to a 14-year-old, you know. The 40-year-old has lived so much more life and understands so much more than the 14-year-old just from experience, you know. And so it's easier for that 40-year-old to understand who they are and accept themselves for who they are. I mean, I still know there are a lot of adults who struggle with this same thing, you know. So I'm not saying that adults don't go through it, but you know, I think it's
different for teenagers, because this is like the first time they're experiencing this, as compared to like adults who's like been going through this for a while. So obviously the approach and the experience would be different. And so then eventually PT comes back from tour with the opera singer, because he's like, I don't want to be away from my family, like this is not really what I want to do. I want to be back with the circus. I want to, you know, go back to what I started doing at the beginning. And the same protesters that have been harassing the crew members for the entire movie, they basically come to the circus and like start fighting the crew members again, and one of them sets the whole circus on fire.
Oh, also something that I noticed about these violent protesters is that when you see them, they are always looking kind of dirty and raggedy. And I think something that is really motivating them to be so against the circus is that they are supposedly normal, but people still look down on them because they're maybe poor and dirty or something, you know? And people still look down on them. But then there's a circus of these freaky people, these freaks that don't belong in society, and people are cheering them on, you know? People are paying money to see them.
Yeah.
And it's like, why do these freaks get praised for this thing that makes them different?
And I'm normal and nobody cares.
Yeah, I'm normal and people don't like me, you know?
Yeah. And they set the circus on fire, and it's sad because, you know, these people have come together, they've created this space for themselves, you know, and that is literally being burnt down in front of their face.
But it shows you that hate really, well, one, it is something learned, and two, it is internal. A lot of hate is internal because they burn down this theater, this building, whatever they call it, and they burn this down because there's something in these people that they don't have, and they don't like that. There's something they don't like about themselves, and so they kind of project it onto these people.
Yeah. And if they were to like undergo an experience like these freaks, and they were to like somehow start the process of being like, this is just who I am, I don't think they would have ended up like that. You know?
Definitely.
And also, I think there's two fight scenes with the protesters. In the first fight scene, the protesters are fighting the crew, and PT has to come and like be like, leave them alone, whatever. But in this scene, they again, like, you
They're
see
like, yes,
how
let's go.
you see how much of a good space they're in, and they like stand up for themselves, and they like fight back.
They're
because
finally not hiding.
Yeah, because they're like, you can't treat me like this, I deserve better than this.
I'm a real person.
Yeah.
No matter what you think, I'm a person.
I am valid, and you can't treat me like this. And you know, they stand up for themselves. And the circus burns down, but
and
you know,
PT's also bankrupt.
PT's bankrupt, everything kind of goes bad. But there's a critic that's been kind of like bringing PT circus down from the beginning of the movie, and he comes back and he sits down on like the burnt building with PT, and they're talking, they share a drink, and you know, he's talking about how people would say, you know, this is a celebration of humanity because PT's brought people of different shapes, different sizes, different colors, and you know, presented them as equals.
Yeah.
You know, this
They
is
brought them together and they made a family.
Yeah, this is a celebration of humanity. That's what he says, you know. And PT,
that's a very important line in this movie as well.
Yeah.
Along with the "This is my song," that line, "This is a celebration of humanity," is very important, because I think a lot of people forget that human beings are different, and that this entire society that we're living in is just about it's humanity, you know.
Yeah.
And people forget that sometimes. And so celebrating these differences, celebrating humanity, you know, that's a very important thing to remember.
Yeah, so PT's like in a bad spot, and then he goes to the bar and he's like, you know, everything's over, everything I work for is like
Charlie climbs up
crazy.
with his little legs on
And then the circus crew joins him at the bar, and I mean, you know, he kind of walked out on them, he hid them from the fancy people, but though the crew didn't like what he did to them, he is still the person who helped
They
them
didn't like
get to
what he did to them, but they appreciated
what he did for
them.
Yes, you know, he created a space for them to come and be themselves and be celebrated for who they are. And you know, they can't just really be like whatever,
like, forget you,
you're on your own,
bye.
They're still you know, his impact still stays with them, and they want their home back, you know.
And they also, it's like taking the bigger person, being the bigger person, you know, taking that road, because they're like, okay, sure, this man might have betrayed me, but at the same time, the society that we live in, we know there's a reason for that. And we know that he also went through all of this criticism to ensure that I had a place, you know, in society. So I'm not going to just look at this one mistake that he made towards me. I'm gonna forgive him, and I'm gonna help him.
And I think that in your life, in my life, in Victoria's life, whoever's life, when you have somebody that has helped you so greatly, even if you don't speak to them anymore, like you're at odds or whatever, they will always mean something to you. Like, just for example, you were in school, you were always like by yourself, you never really had any friends, but like that one person who would come and like talk to you and like be nice to you and whatever, like you would always remember that one person, you know. know?
Yeah.
Even if you aren't like best friends like later on in life, but you always remember them.
For example, when my mom was in secondary school and she was in Form 6, there was this one boy and nobody used to talk to him, nobody used to invite him places. But she, with her loudmouth self, would go and sit down and just talk and yap to him. And after they graduated, she didn't really hear a lot from him, but then one day they bounced up each other in public and he had the best things to say to her. He had the best thing to say about her because he remembered that this person was kind to me when other people weren't, you know?
And I think you might have that person or you might meet that person, but you could also be that person for somebody else.
And
you
I
know?
think being that person is way more important than
having that person. For sure. Because I think that you never really know what somebody's going through. And the saying, if you have nothing good to say, don't say anything at all, that can go a long way for somebody because you never actually know what people are going through, and your like smile at them or your good morning or how are you or whatever could really take a person a long way, you know? Little things go a long way for people. You just never really know. So that's why you should like not be mean to people. Like,
don't
just
be mean, guys.
try to be a good
Be
person
nice.
as much as you can, you know, because you don't really know what you're doing for people.
Yeah.
Because your rude comment that you think, oh, it's just a joke, it really means nothing, could drive somebody over the edge.
Again, you know what you're doing to people, but you don't necessarily know what you're doing for people.
Yeah.
You don't know how that thing that you're doing is affecting that person.
Yeah.
And even if you are having a bad day, and you're allowed to have bad days, you know, if somebody else decides, oh look, let me just be nice to you, you know, that can significantly increase your day, you know.
And I also think when you're in a place like I'm happy with myself, like it's easier to be the bigger person, as compared to like when you're like very unsure and like, you know, you have like confusing emotions because you like don't really know anything about yourself.
It takes time,
but it is easier to be the bigger person,
and it is so relieving when you get to that place. You know?
And after all of that, they sing a song together, and basically PT and the crew rebuild the circus basically and recreate that space that, you know, they originally had, and they do successfully do that in the end, and a happy ending basically. I really do urge you all to watch this movie, especially if you're feeling like nobody will ever like me because I'm different or I'm weird or whatever. To be honest,
Screw it.
Honestly, no, honestly.
Screw it.
Honestly.
Like, moral of the story, no matter how you look, no matter your race, your sexuality, your religion,
like anything like that.
Like love yourself, love people around you, spread love, not hate, you know?
I promise you, when you realize like this is who I am, this is me, even if you think like I'm just gonna be by myself because nobody's gonna like me, I promise you that you will find people that love you for you.
And even if you are one of those people who are like, okay, I'm by myself, and you get comfortable with that, like you're like that's fine. That's fine if you're more comfortable being by yourself, you know.
Yeah. But basically, you know, this is a great story of self-acceptance, and it shows how difficult the journey to getting to a point of being okay with yourself, how difficult that journey can be. But it is a very important process and experience. To be honest, I don't think I'm there, I don't think Victoria's there, I don't think anybody's there.
Anybody gets there 100%.
Yeah,
you know,
you get to like different points of being okay with yourself, but I don't know if you ever really get there.
And then especially, I'm an 18-year-old, you know, I most definitely have so much more learning and growing to do for myself, you know, before I'm at that point. And you know that I can take steps to, you know, figure myself out, you know.
It's all about that process, to be honest. You know, try to figure out what's good for you, what works for you.
Don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone.
Try to surround yourself with people that accept you for you and don't put you down because of the things that you like or the things that make you different from other people.
And
you know?
Be that person that doesn't put other people down.
That's really important. Don't put other people down
because they're different.
Or you think they're different. You know, that's basically it. To be honest, there is nothing I'm not worthy of. Say it to yourself every single morning when you wake up. Look in the mirror. Say it before you go to bed.
Watch
say
Jackman singing. After this, maybe watch Les Mis.
Watch this movie. Thank you for all of the support from the beginning of this podcast.
Thank you for putting money in my paycheck.
I never do that one. But thank you guys again for all the support. I really, 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 really genuinely appreciate it. It means a lot. Thanks for listening. Thanks, Victoria, again for being here.
You're welcome.
And I will talk to you guys in the next episode.